So now what we're dealing with is we have this report, whistleblowers claiming the FBI has been purging conservative agents. Okay.
Is that right?
It's reported that several whistleblowers came out and said people who are conservative are being called disloyal and they're being removed. You take a look at the GOP frontrunner in Michigan getting arrested and charged on several misdemeanors, but the FBI raids his house.
That's right. And then they dragged him out of there.
They drag him out. So any way you cut it, the federal government is now arresting opponents of the Democrats, and it is a Democrat administration basically criminally prosecuting and targeting its rivals. Meanwhile, you have people, terrorists, who are showing up to the homes of justices with no accountability. Someone literally came out to kill Kavanaugh, and Merrick Garland still will do nothing because, I mean, let's be real.
They're into it.
Merrick Garland and the protesters are the same faction.
They want it to happen.
Mm-hmm. Jen Psaki said, we encourage this.
Yeah.
And then the dude shows up. Lori Lightfoot called people to arms.
That's right.
Literally over what was happening with Roe v. Wade in this league. Mm-hmm. And this guy...
Wasn't it like May 9th or something?
Yes.
She did that? Yeah.
She said it's a call to arms and we must fight for our rights and we will not allow it. And then this guy, he heard it apparently, and then he shows up. Fortunately, he turned himself in. We're very, very fortunate the guy had a moment of clarity to be like, okay, this is crazy. But this is what happens when they incite, they encourage, and then they don't enforce the law. I would say the federal government's unwillingness to enforce the law here is they are involved themselves in stochastic terrorism.
Do you know what's interesting though too is
what is stochastic terrorism?
It's when you say things like, we certainly encourage people to show up and protest in front of these people's houses, and then someone shows up with weapons to kill the person who lives there. So it's kind of like, oh, won't someone rid me of this priest? And then someone goes and kills the priest. I never said to do it. I was speaking rhetorically.
Charles Manson, apparently. That's how he was like, sure, it'd be great if some people showed up at their house and wreaked havoc or whatever he told. And then Tex and the rest of them went to the house and killed a bunch of people. Manson was like, I never told him to do it. Yeah, you kind of insinuated that maybe they should.
So when Jen Psaki encourages them to do it, Lori Lightfoot says, call to arms, literally. And then the guy shows up. And then Merrick Garland, okay, this one guy is getting charged. Right. That's their line, actually trying to pull it off. But the people who are protesting in front of the homes, they're committing a federal crime. And the federal government's like, no, that's fine. We want hyper-partisan pressure applied to the courts. That's the reason why you can't do this, is that there can be no justice unless the courts can function. That's why we have the law in the first place. This is actually the legal justification. If you can't have courts be free from political pressures, then you can't actually have justice.
No, then there's no justice at all.
Which is why we said no protesting to sway a court's opinion. Seamus brought this up the other day. Judges are not elected officials.
Right.
They're appointed. I mean, some judges are actually. But these federal judges are appointed.
Not, yeah.
So you're not going to change if they're going to be in office or not. What you're trying to do is force them to give the ruling in your favor, which is not justice. And Merrick Garland, the federal government, Biden's administration, the DOJ, they are in favor of all of this.
But if you look at even what happened in Virginia, right? So we had protests outside John Roberts' house, Chief Justice, and there was a recent election in Virginia. Everyone thought it was really going to shake things up. Glenn Youngkin, conservative, came in to lead Virginia, and he didn't do anything about the protesters outside Roberts' house. He posted on Twitter that he was monitoring the situation, and it's like,
yep.
No, like, as my friend Jack Posobiec said, it was like, no, the rest of us are watching what's going on. You're supposed to actually do something. You're the leader of this state.
It is a federal law. I'm not sure there's a state law prohibiting them from doing it. So they don't have the jurisdiction.
Oh, is that right?
That's my understanding. I could be wrong, though. Yeah, the idea is that Merrick Garland would be the one who would have to say this is a federal law that you are breaking and have to go in. You'd think after someone showed up to kill the guy, he'd be like, okay, we're going to get people out of here.
Right.
Nope.
No.
So I'm just telling you, January 6th hearings, nothing on May 29th.
It's a total show trial. It's preposterous. And that they brought in a daytime TV guy to like do the production on it.
Prime time.
I thought it was a Good Morning America guy.
Oh, is
No,
that?
it's a former president of ABC News.
Is it? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, he probably did Good Morning America.
Yeah, I think he did. But it's just so ridiculous. It's so obvious and transparent what they're doing. They're propagandizing this entire thing just to try and make it so that Trump can't run again and so that all conservatives are vilified as white supremacists.
Well, the reality is conservatives don't care that a bunch of leftists tried burning down the White House and forced the president into a bunker. I mean, you can argue, no, of course they care. Yeah, but they don't care nearly as much as the left does. The left doesn't want to talk about how they actually set fire to St. John's Church and a White House guard post and tried ripping down the barricades. And
They did rip down the barricades.
They did, but I mean, like they wanted to actually breach the White House. 150 officers were injured in that, and conservatives don't bring it up. The right, I mean, I hate saying conservatives, but every single person in opposition to the violence, yeah, we can sit here and be like, yeah, Antifa's gone too far, but we're not funding hearings. There's no conservative, right-wing, libertarian, moderate millionaires or billionaires being like, we need to get all these politicians to do primetime hearings about what happened on May 29th when the president was forced in the bunker by a bunch of far-left extremists. It never happens. That's just one example of what the right is never willing to do. Meanwhile, the left won't shut up. A right-wing dude can fart in an elevator in next to a senator, and they're screaming. People in pink hats storm the Supreme Court. They go to the Supreme Court, they're banging on the doors, and they're screaming. They show up to the Senate buildings, and they're on every floor screaming, and they shut it down. That's not an insurrection. They go to the White House and set fire to a church, nearly burning it down. It's called the President's Church. They set fire to the guard post, as I mentioned. They tore down the barricades and tried breaching the fence. 150 officers harmed. The left doesn't care. And apparently, the right doesn't either. So long as regular people are caught between a news cycle showing constant images of violent MAGA people, and the right just keeps saying, no, 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 well, then the only thing regular people are going to see is the right wing being violent.
What do you think they should do?
I think people on the right should have been having hearings on May 29 endlessly. I think the first thing they should do once they're all sworn into Congress on January 3rd is they should impeach Joe Biden, and they should have hearings on Ukraine and Burisma and the private equity deals in China, and they should hold hearings on 529, and they should say 529 over and over and over again and never shut up about it.
This is kind of be brilliant.
And then here's what happens. You know what I do? I'm sitting in the congressional hearing, and they say, we'd like to have a conversation with you about this big tech social media policy. And I would say, thank you for the question. On May 29th, far left extremists set fire to a church outside of the White House, and they breached the barricades, injuring 150 police officers. And they forced that, sir, we're talking about big tech. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So as I was saying, on 529, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that is what they're doing.
And I've got, they're posting memes. They are going nuts. Now, I will say, it's the economy, stupid. They can try and do everything they want. I don't think it's going to save them. But it's certainly, when it comes to the political violence and the escalation of the culture war, the right never stands up and says, this is the subject. The news cycle is always being set by the establishment.
Well, we're always just reacting. We're always just reacting to what they're doing.
529.
What was interesting too,
529.
They talked about that whole, wasn't that when they kept insisting that Trump had gone over to the president's church specifically for a photo op?
Yep.
And they were complaining that protesters had been unlawfully cleared from that park. That was the big story from 529.
And when Trump was forced into the emergency bunker, they mocked him for it.
That's right.
They laughed. They said it was funny. The Republicans, so the Senate Republicans are mostly just establishment shills who are like, better keep my head down and not get involved so that we can take power back. And, there's relatively few actual good politicians, period.
Right.
But I think, for one, it's going to be really interesting next year because Republicans they're not going to have a veto-proof majority, and they can nuke the filibuster, but Joe Biden can still veto. I think they should just scream 529. Make
Just over
stickers.
and over again.
529, the insurrection.
Yeah, but
the insurrection on 529, Luke.
you expect the Republicans to do something, and
No, I don't.
and they don't do nothing.
Right.
And what better way to kind of lull people into this kind of servitude, this kind of larger enslavement, than having these people up there who talk a good game but don't really do anything. And again, when you look at a lot of the things that's been happening, a lot of people like to blame only the Democrats. No, the Republicans also are hand in hand working together, not serving the interests of the general public, not helping the people out there, not going out of their way to actually serve their representatives. They serve the special interest. And if they gain power, which they most likely will, you could expect the same shenanigans that are going to screw you over, but instead of being screwed over by the left side, you're going to be screwed over on the the right side. So I don't have any hope. This is just my own political kind of ideology from what I've seen within the past 15 years, because it's kind of sickening seeing this kind of left-right divide and conquer game and nothing get achieved, nothing get done, and none of these parties actually truly address the issues that are affecting the general public. They always talk about emotional, hyperbolic issues. They always change the conversation, and we never get to the core issue of why we are being screwed over every single day.
Well, I think one thing that happened with the Republicans too is they spent a long time just worrying about, fiscal
Iraq,
issues,
Afghanistan,
fiscal tax issues, things like that. They thought that they were above all of this other stuff. A lot of conservatives that I knew, growing up or over the last several years, prior to this current cultural moment, were very insistent that they were fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And I think that was a big mistake. I think giving up the culture and saying whatever crazy stuff you want to do to the culture is fine. You want to destroy the foundations of American principles, that's fine. You want to say that all the founding fathers were racist, that's fine. You want to tear down Confederate statues, that's fine. Right? You want to say that the Declaration of Independence was just racist, that's fine. We're just going to deal with tax law. That was a really huge and stupid mistake because it gave everything away. It said the thing that we're fighting for is meaningless anyway. So what's the point of doing it? What is it that we are going out there and dealing with? I was at a conference recently, TPUSA, this Young Women's Leadership Summit, and I was on a panel talking about some stuff, and it was really fascinating. The most fascinating part were the questions. So you had all of these thousands of women there, young women, who are really insistent that it's time to take back the culture, time to go for it, and they're angry and they're really pissed off. One young woman asked a question saying that she grew up with, conservative values, but so many people around her grew up with extremely liberal values. And one of the things about that, she said, was that no one knew what a soul was. No one knew what it meant to have a soul, an everlasting soul, an internal soul. People thought that when they had issues that she thought might be spiritual issues, and that we potentially growing up, people of my age group would think were spiritual issues or things of that nature. People thought that they were depression, that they needed to take drugs to fix it, that they needed to be medicalized, that they needed psychiatric care to fix these kinds of issues. Issues like despair, issues like depression. These are not just all issues that are in your brain. And so we have given away religion, we have given away culture, we have given away meaning. And we are expecting anybody to be able to stand up on anything. There's no foundation. We burned it down. We let them burn it down. And we handed them the match.
Andy, do you have any hope in these lizard people calling themselves politicians?
No.
No, they're not lizard people, or
I'm being facetious, obviously. But do you have any hope in the current political system? Where do you see things from your perspective?
I spend a lot of time outside the United States now. When I go back I pay attention to things that are happening here, it actually makes me really sad. Like I don't think it's a sign of a vibrant democracy for people to show up outside the homes of judges to try to intimidate them, and pressure them and harass them into ruling a certain way. That's actually, I think, a very emblematic of decay in liberal democracy. And all the issues we're talking about here, it's just, it's hard to be optimistic. It's hard to come up with solutions. It's almost at this point, it's kind of like a certain line has already been passed where any solutions are maybe just band-aids. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic there. In responding to Livy, I think the political right had ceded culture to the left, and the left went full speed ahead. And you just look at every institution that affects culture and is self-replicating, they have power over, and it's significant. So, I think even if the Republicans now were to take up May 2020 insurrection against the White House, it wouldn't have really any currency to go far because there's no media buy-in on that narrative. And I'm such a critic of the media apparatus for the fact that they can create certain narratives and uphold narratives that are untrue and mislead the public and misinform them. And so it's, if you don't have the support of that media infrastructure, you can rally around a claim. It won't go anywhere.
Yeah, but I don't. If you look at the big cable networks, their viewership is substantially less than Fox News, and MSNBC, CNN, and HLN, they get less than what Fox gets combined.
Yes, but that and in combination with print publications, they are able to make the talking points that get to the desk of those in Congress, right?
And my point before was Republicans will be sitting down with Democrats, and Democrats will say A, B, and C, and the Republicans go A, B, and C, A, B, and C, when the Republicans instead should be going 1, 2, 3. When the Democrats say 1-6, the Republicans should only talk about May 29th. So right now, with the January 6 hearings, Republicans should be having their own hearings, and any attempt at any conversation on the House floor, on C-SPAN or otherwise, should be on May 29th. Then the media won't have an option. So I mentioned it's similar to with Donald Trump. He was on Twitter. He should have got on Parler. If he did, it would have forced the media to cover Parler, and it would have forced journalists to have signed up for Parler to get access to his tweets, because the journalists said outright, my job requires me to have notifications turned on for Trump's tweets.
That's right.
But Trump wouldn't do it. Not until after he's out of the news cycle for the most part. He's still here, but he's not the president. What needs to happen is Republicans need to stop playing the game the Democrats are demanding they play. And the Democrats can come and say, I've got a health care bill, and the Republicans should respond with, thank you for bringing it up. Yes, on May 29th, there was an insurrection. And then they're going to be like, we're having a debate on what? Oh, health care? Right. The health care for people on May 29th. The president was forced. Just do not give him a chance. You get a phone call from a New York Times journalist, and they say, I'd like to get your comments on this gun control bill. Yes. On May 29th, there was an insurrection. And then they can print no comments, or they can choose to highlight the issue. So Republicans have power whether they want to acknowledge it or not. And until they decide to set the news cycle will be whatever Democrats want it to be.
I think the public are owed a public inquiry about not just May 29, 2020, but the months of riots from coast to coast. Yep. I tried my best to illuminate just really one city in my book, Portland. And there was dozens of other cities that experience recurring political violence, and to this day there's really been no congressional interest in finding out who was behind some of these funding sources that were channeling money to these pop-up groups that were on GoFundMe and on Cash App and Venmo, who are part of these networks that are helping transport people from Portland to Louisville to other parts of the United States.
And the issue is the Republicans actually don't want to challenge it. The Democrats and the Democratic and the Republican Party are the uniparty. There was an insurgency in 2016. Bernie lost. Trump won. Trump candidates ended up winning, and they didn't know how to stop him because Trump was leading a lot of the party, and too many Republican voters were unwilling to support someone like Mitt Romney. So now they're confused and they're scared. But I tell you this, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, they would love to be having a debate with the Democrats over, how much money to print, or, on what day do we bomb children? Is it the 1st or the 2nd of the month? Instead, you get Trump, who's like Abraham Accords, pulling our troops out of the Middle East, pulling our troops out of Syria, and shoring up our borders. And they don't like that.
They canceled the Trans-Pacific Partnership, too.
Oh, yeah, that pissed off Republicans and Democrats. They were so angry.
Part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, this deal where they wanted to get the United States hooked on basically Malaysian oil, was called the Investor-State Dispute Settlement. And it would have gave these Malaysian oil companies the ability to sue the United States for discrimination if we chose not to buy their oil. And then the American taxpayer would have had to pay these corporations for discrimination. And Bernie Sanders was against it. Trump came in and on his 3rd day in office basically shut the thing down.
Well, it was like NAFTA on steroids, but the counter argument to that is that there were rumors that this deal was already dead, and it didn't take much not to go through with it because the negotiations have failed.
I don't believe that they redid the deal. They did it with all the other countries reignited their own version of the deal without the U.S.
It hasn't stopped them before, especially with NAFTA under Bill Clinton, which again pushes globalization, pushes multinational corporate interests to have the way with the people, and that's essentially what they've been doing for a very long time.
It's what Klaus Schwab wanted, right?
Yeah, Klaus Schwab.
Corporations to
wants present
wants.
tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he wants.
I mean, it's getting. I would say.
Wants and is succeeding at
Yeah, we
creating.
were a lot of
That's
people
right.
were forced and manipulated to take a product that they didn't want, but if they wanted to continue and live their lives normally, they had to. And life hasn't come back to normal, and I don't think it ever will.
I disagree with that. They didn't have to. It's only because they were too scared that everybody ended up having to do something.
Mm-hmm.
If they come out, let me give you this example. You shouldn't speed. Speeding is dangerous. Why does everybody speed?
It's fun.
Everybody, no, I mean 5 miles over.
It's still more fun than going the
It
speed
is.
limit.
It is illegal to go even 1 mile an hour over the limit. But it's like a slap on the wrist, right? You get like a minor ticket. Yet you go on the highway, everyone's breaking the law, and for some reason, they're not pulling everyone over. The reality is, it's because they can't.
Right.
Well,
They
'cause
only
it-
pull over a couple of people, the people who are egregious and in red cars.
If everyone
Yes.
breaks
Yeah.
the law together, then we control what the law is.
It's like we were talking
No, no,
about
no.
pedestrians earlier.
The cops
It's-
want
it's-
everyone to go the same speed. That's
Let
the key.
me give it to you a better way. It's not about breaking the law. It's about the law not being culturally relevant. Because we've mentioned this before. There are books that are called like wacky laws. And I remember reading one where it's like, in Massachusetts, it's illegal to put your apple pie on your windowsill. But like, that's ridiculous. If you did that, no cop is going to walk up and be like, And the reason for it was that back when Massachusetts was, tiny, there you'd attract animals or something.
Right, right.
There's bills where it's like you can't take showers on Tuesday or Thursday, and you can't water your lawn on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Those are California laws.
Well, those are now, but like on the East Coast. And it was
Really?
because the local water sources were limited, so they were like, you can't do these things. But now, these are not culturally relevant and would never be enforced.
Right.
Speed limits are weird because they're kind of top-down authoritarian in that, like, it'll say every piece of this road is 65 miles an hour, even when you're turning and dipping and turning. When like, well, this should be 45. Sometimes you see signs at night; it should be slower at night. If
Right,
it's
that's
raining, it
true.
should be slower. But the signs always say the same number, so you have to make a judgment call.
That is changing.
That's
There-
good.
There are digital speed limit signs now. They change.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
And they can get hacked. Watch out! Don't fall for the propaganda when it says 108.
99. Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to get you. I think all this.
It's like this says minimum 100. Okay, I'm going too fast.
This propaganda of the left and the right and the Republican and the Democrat feels like a cult party game. And I'm looking at this Thomas Jefferson quote. I've been staring at it, that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. And if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, I think this is played out exactly. Where has the U.S. military been in the midst of this problem? They're not involved. They're not messing with us. The National Guard's not giving us problems. It's corporations that are manipulating people with media. It's BlackRock, things like these giant conglomerate
Federal
banks.
Reserve, which gives them these loans they use then buy up the property from poor people.
It really is. And I think, if we want to revolt against anything, it's against the corporations. It's against the bank.
I think that you're onto something with revolting against the corporations, because they also unleash all of this wicked and ridiculous messaging all over us that doesn't make any sense, that isn't even in line with what they're doing. It's that classic thing, the Pride Month. All of the big companies are like, we're super rainbow friendly. We're covered in glitter in the US, Australia, and England and Canada. And then you look at their messaging in North Africa and the Middle East and China, and there's no rainbow glitter. It's just the basic plain logo. They don't care about these things.
Well,
they don't care about the values that
Here's-
they claim to. Here's
the issue with
they just want to
corporations.
push them on us and make us think that they believe in these things and make us believe in them too, even though it's
Corporations-
ruining the country.
Corporations are authoritarian.
Yes,
So
that is correct.
With a constitutional republic, you have various systems of electing representative or forms of governance, but we have guaranteed rights. Corporations have a boss, and the boss says yes or no. You want money? I can give it to you, or I can take it away. So when Klaus Schwab is talking about the world being governed by corporations, the morsel idea they try to plant to people is, we're talking about people who do the work, having say over how the work gets done. And what's really happening is massively powerful interests who can decide whether you get access to resources or not. They're massively authoritarian. They're becoming more powerful than governments themselves. He wants the authoritarians to take over.
Yeah,
That's it.
And we should be careful to say corporations.
Exactly.
Because I have a corporation, you have a corporation,
Thank
we
you.
all have our different businesses. These are people who other corporations can't even compete with because they're on such another level. They have bribed so many politicians. They have bought them off. They have the blackmail on so many politicians that essentially they have created a new kind of entity that is even more powerful than the government, with how much money and power that they're able to influence our everyday lives over.
This is an important distinction. They're not corporations anymore. When something becomes a megacorp, whatever you want to call it, it's not like a corporation like we intended for it to be. It's not a person. It's a group of them, for instance, and it's bigger than a government. I can repeat everything we just said, but it needs a different word. We can't take these things seriously.
I'm just imagining, like, back in the day with medieval warfare, you had groups of similar people, France and Britain, right? They're from the same area. It's the land. Now, like, warfare very much is major corporations, but just imagine thinking like McDonald's private army and things like that. It's like our chief export is cheeseburgers, and they have a bunch of armed guards.
But it's like, who owns McDonald's?
No,
Probably BlackRock.
But you think I'm kidding? Take a look at the Banana Republic, right? When armed guards went in and wanted to make sure the bananas could be shipped out because the bananas were the key, product
Right.
for the company. What was it? What was the company that?
Chiquita.
Chiquita,
Yeah.
right? And they like overthrew the country.
Yep.
It's like the government,
Exciting.
the corporation was more powerful than the
Yeah.
government.
Look at the stories of...
And they had banana guards. They had
Exactly.
banana police.
Well,
Look
if
what
you look
happened
at-
with Panama, Noriega, the stories of the economic hitman. These are stories that are absolutely mind-blowing to show you how these multinational corporations use intelligence agencies to do their bidding for them. I mean, we reached such a crazy level where, again, our government is for purchase, and it's been bought by some really awful people who only want to benefit themselves and don't care about anybody
they-
else. They
Well,
don't
I
care
mean,
about you.
They buy it by buying the corporations that work within the government. Like, I'm just looking at McDonald's Corp. The top 3 investment holders are Vanguard Group, State Street, and BlackRock. They own about 19% of McDonald Corp.
You would nailed
That's
it. It was
hilarious.
BlackRock. The other thing too, these corporations think that because they are so big, because they have amassed so much money and economic power, that it is up to them to influence government policy. We saw this in Florida with Disney coming after the laws in that state, believing that they had some sort of right to tell Ron DeSantis and the legislature and all of the people of Florida that they couldn't have this parental rights and education bill, even though it was wildly popular. And corporations came out just recently, a whole bunch of them all got together and sent a letter saying, hey, we demand action on gun control. It's important that we say something. We have to take a stand and say something. Shut up. Like, shut up. You go make money. We already give you a ton of money. We buy your stupid stuff. We eat your stupid bad cheeseburgers. You don't get a say over the government that we elected. Maybe each individual does. Write a letter to your congressman, write a letter to your representative, what have you, like you're an individual constituent. But the corporations that believe that they have a right to influence the federal government, to influence the state governments, it's such a huge overreach on their part.
Yeah, and you said it earlier that you thought this was intentional. It's happening. I think so, because there's nothing more that these people would love to see than the fall of American Democratic Republic. It's the
Right, because
biggest
then
resistance.
they will get to take over. They will just get to do whatever they want.
What's your favorite corporation, Andy?
I don't think I have one, but this conversation, I haven't put enough thought into thinking about the relationship between corporations and government, and I'm embarrassed that I'm ignorant about that. As Libby was channeling out her anger just now, it's made me so angry and frustrated. It's like, yeah, why is Ben and Jerry's and all these other SJW corporations and trying to affect legislation? In the UK, Ben and Jerry's is trying to pressure the British government against its legislation about sending illegal asylum seekers to Rwanda. And
wow.
It's but I think the case in Florida of a corporation that's headquartered in Burbank, California, trying to tell parents what they can or cannot have in terms of information about their children's education, that's like butt out. I'm surprised that there aren't more people pushing back. You're right that there does seem to just we just lay down and accept that we accept this culture where these mega corporations with their billions and billions of dollars can actually try to influence our laws.
And this
Grossly inappropriate.
Trillions.
This
Yes,
used to be a
grossly
left-wing
inappropriate.
position, and now we're talking about it.
Well, that's because the corporations took all of the, took all of the tax breaks and whatever else from the GOP, and then just sided with the leftists anyway.
I'm trying to look. Is it Unilever that owns Ben and Jerry's? Can anyone confirm that?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
I think it's Unilever. Not Jerry's. I'm gonna try and see
Ben
who
and
owns.
Jerry's and Dove are both owned by Unilever.
So I wonder who owns Unilever.
No, Unilever is the parent company.
Yeah, but that's what
Oh,
they-
you mean the investors?
yeah. Who invests?
Oh, come on.
Not- yeah.
You know.
You
Let's-
already
Wait,
know.
didn't you
I have
already
an
say, isn't
idea.
it BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard?
They own like 18 to 19% of almost every corporation in the
Everything,
world.
right.
Every publicly
Yeah.
traded corp, Microsoft, Dow. You go down the list. It is embarrassing that I didn't know. It's embarrassing for me that I wasn't aware of this till 2 years ago. It's
Well, I think it's probably just good that you're aware of it now.
yeah.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.